you're a phenomenal storyteller.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, it's incredible to be able to have a platform like podcasting to really share your story. So thank you for that.
Of course. So just really quickly, I just wanted to highlight that you and Gooden are teaming up for a 4-week masterclass called Be Heard, the Art of Podcasting. And that's going to be a 4-week class, and that's from January 12th to February 2nd. So it sounds like a really incredible experience. So everyone keep your eye out for that. So I wanted to start off I guess like my style of interviewing is it's just in conversation. Like this is really a celebration of you, and I'm really excited for people to learn more about you and your journey. Like I said, I had that opportunity of diving into some of your podcasts and just learning about how incredible your whole journey and story is. So this is an opportunity for other people to be inspired and ignited about the podcast journey and just entrepreneurship journey as well. So I'd love for you to start off by introducing yourself and sharing a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I'm Jennifer Ho. I am the founder and creator of Hanger Studios, which is probably the first woman of color podcasting production company that I know of. I mean, there might have been something out there, but the first that I know of. And we've been in business since 2009. So this was way back before podcasting was anything like it is today. And it was an interesting start. So at the moment, I run all the background logistics to the business. I have a staff of about 9-10 people that deal with, editing, post-production, engineering, to websites, social media, you name it. It's really a all-encompassing podcast production company. But it wasn't an easy start. It was really, especially back in 2009, I was a marketing consultant at the time for about 15 years prior to that. And it was great and it was fun, but I was really in the nitty gritty and I wanted to jump in instead of growing other people's businesses. I really wanted to start my own. So I partnered up with a friend who knew the production side of it, and he was in traditional radio. So he did producing at multiple stations, all over the United States. And I said, hey, you hate your job, quit your job and let's do this thing called podcasting. He's like, what is podcasting? I said, well, it's kind of like internet radio, because that's what people were calling it back then, was internet radio. And he says, okay, well, let's do it. So I would work all day with my marketing clients and consult them. And then I would come home and I would build out the website. I would cold call people and say, hey, have you ever thought about being a podcaster? And they would inevitably ask me, what is podcasting? And so I would have to educate them on podcasting before they even thought about, having or going for our services. So it was, it's so funny because right now I'm thinking I would look up the Amazon bestseller list. And I would say, oh, this author really looks like a thought leader. So I would find out what their number was and I would call them up. And call after call after call, it was always a no or a hang up or, just grinding at that time. I was really grinding at that time. And all I needed was one yes. And so eventually we had one of our oldest clients, her name is Sandy Klein. She's still with us today. She said, sure, let me try this. She decided to leave 1010 Wins and she started a podcast with us where she talks about, she highlights women who are lesser well known, but are making huge amounts of change in the world. And so that's what she wanted to do. She wanted to retire from 1010 and start talking to these women. And that's when I really fell in love, was after that first client. I saw what it actually did for people, not only the listeners, but the hosts as well. The host got to live in her glory of speaking to these women and highlighting these women. And the guests got to be highlighted and say, hey, we're looking to make change. Why don't you jump on board? And then the listeners would write in or call in and say, we love what you're doing. So there was this global community that we were creating in this one podcast where they were just elevating each other. And who doesn't want to live in that type of space, right? And so we got her, and she was great to work with, but it was very slow. That was our one yes, but the one yes couldn't pay the bills for the first 2 years. So we had 2 eviction notices, and at the time I had small children, and the landlord is saying, hey, you've got a week to pay up or you've got to move. And so there was a lot of asking family members, hey, can you loan me the money so we can keep the production company going? And they would always say, why don't you get a real job? Well, I don't want a real job. I want this job. And I want to help. This is going to be something. And then I'll never forget, I think it was 2014 or 2015. I was sitting on the sofa on a Saturday night, and SNL came on. And I love Saturday Night Live. And a skit came on, and I don't know if anybody remembers this, but it was a skit about cereal. And they were making fun of something. But I knew that if it was on Saturday Night Live, that it had finally hit. Like podcasting had hit something enough for SNL to make fun of it. And then the calls started flooding in. And now it's just been, when I look back at the journey between 2009 and like 2014 or 15, it was really nail biting, lots of tears, lots of what am I doing? A lot of how do I even get out there? And we happened to just be in the right position when podcasting hit. So when SNL came out, the floodgates just opened and people were flying in. And first it was, your neighbor next door who wants to talk about different movies. And then it could be old radio heads that were leaving radio and wanted to come over to podcasting. But we really didn't have a lot of the large companies coming through yet. But over the years, I'd say over the last 6 years, companies have just been flooding in because now there's a proof of concept, right? Everybody loves podcasting. So they've been hopping on board. So we've been seeing a lot of the Fortune 50 companies coming in. And we work with some really amazing, amazing clients. Yeah. That's the short of it.
I mean, it's incredible. And I'm always just so captivated. When we talked even earlier this week, I'm just captivated with the way that you share your experiences and you bring people on this journey. And again, we talked about this a little earlier, but I'm hoping that you're going to go back to big girl panties or expanding on that because your storytelling is absolutely phenomenal. Everything that you just shared too is like, you started something before anyone else was really doing it.
Yeah.
You had that vision and knew the impact that it would create. And explaining, or sharing that, you also experience those moments of what am I doing? Right. And getting these eviction notices. I would love to know if you could share kind of like those moments, I guess, being an entrepreneur and that journey of kind of like being like, when all odds are against me, right? Mm-hmm. What is it that I'm doing? But when you deeply know that what you're doing is really of purpose, right? I think a lot of us are going through that right now. And I think you've kind of weathered the storms or many storms and had this great vision. I'd love to know if you can share any of those stories with us.
Sure. I mean, at the very beginning, I remember calling up my dad and I said, hey, I'm going to stop at the marketing consulting. I love growing other people's businesses, but I think it's really time for me to kind of put my own butt on the line and do this for myself. And he said to me, what is this? And why don't you go back to school and get a real job? And I said, well, and that's always hard to hear from your father or one of your parents who are saying, to me, it felt like very much of a squashing of what my dream was. And so that was very disheartening. But there was a moment there where I had to say to myself, listen, I'm an adult. I get to make my own choices. And this is something that I believe is going to hit. Did I have the question in the back of my head that said, okay, what am I doing? Like, is he seeing something that I'm not seeing? Is the world seeing something that I'm not seeing? And I'm just being an idiot, basically. Because you have those moments of feeling like what you're doing is insane, just completely insane. And also the idea of gambling, the financial part of it in your life. I mean, remember, I had small children. So am I putting them at risk? Am I not taking care of them by doing this thing? And, it took everything to really say, okay, I'm going to keep going. I was both responsible in keeping my marketing clients. So I was responsible financially. It didn't cover everything, right? But I was responsible financially that way. But when I was done with them, I made sure to stay up till 1, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning to get done what I said I would get done for that day. And so that was actually a huge key for me, was being in integrity with myself. So when I said I would do something, because a lot of people will say, hey, I'm going to go to the gym, and they end up not going to the gym. So they're lying to themselves, right? And they're not keeping their word to themselves. And that was the first thing that I learned in business, was to really be in integrity with myself. If I said I'm going to get this thing done, then when I'm done, then I can rest. And so that was really the major factor at the beginning. And once I realized that it was really up to me to do the thing, is when I said, okay, it was up to me. And at the same time, understanding that I know a lot of people. So I got to lean on my friends as well, or the relationships that I've cultivated over years. I didn't need to pretend that I knew all the answers all the time. It was okay that I didn't know all the answers, which was also a very hard thing for me to get over. I never liked to look dumb in front of people. And so I would usually just nod my head and not know what's going on and, fail down the road. I started to really speak up and ask questions, and ask, hey, can you support me in this? You know how to do this. So I would never be where I am if I didn't have the partnerships of those people. I never once for a second in my day forget the partnerships that I've had with people who got me to, or who have gotten Hanger to where it is. Right. And so at the beginning, it was a lot of taking a look at myself, seeing what is working for me and what's not working for me. So being prideful wasn't really working for me. Acting like I didn't need anybody's support wasn't helping for me. Listening to old records in my head that I wasn't good enough, that I couldn't do it. How crazy am I to be doing this? I really got to take a look at that and say, okay, thank you for that information. You can sit back there and just be quiet for now. So it really took a lot of self-reflection to see what was working for me and what wasn't. And then at the same time, getting over myself and asking for support, right? Because a lot of us are out there saying, oh, I can do it, but I have too much pride to ask for support in certain situations. There is no way in hell I could have done any of this without asking for support from multiple people and probably multiple times. So thank you for everybody who's helped. Yeah. I think that answers the question. Is that?
It's phenomenal.
Okay.
Yeah, I could honestly just listen to you speak for hours, and this advice that you're giving. And it's so true, that integrity of keeping your word for yourself. And I know often we talk about integrity of like keeping your word for other people, but really, like, I feel like the most important thing is keeping your word for yourself, right?
It is. And once you start in that pattern and you get used to being in integrity with yourself, it starts to spread out with everybody, right? You start to be on time for your clients, When you say you're going to send something to them at X time, you send it to them at that time, if not sooner, right? And so you really just, and it's the quickest way I've found, it's the quickest way for self-esteem and confidence, right? Because you know you're going to do it. There's no question, right? And it's as simple as starting with the snooze button in the morning, right? You say you're going to wake up at 8, and then you snooze another 10 minutes, you snooze another 10 minutes. And so you're out of integrity with yourself. It's something small, but it's a starting point. Yeah.
I feel like you're calling me out on that. I love this. And I need to stop. And it's true. And I hold so much integrity in so many areas of my life, but I don't need to press snooze 3-4 times in the morning. Like I really don't, right? Even if I set the alarm earlier, we were talking earlier about the 5 a.m. club.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just thinking about like that discussion and having integrity for yourself and all that you can achieve when you do have that integrity for your own word, and the power in setting yourself free and knowing that you don't have to do everything by yourself. And when you ask for help, it's a lot more, well, obviously it's more freeing because you're not as stressed out and you don't feel like you have to do everything on your own, and messes with, like, it helps with time management, but it opens up opportunities for collaboration.
Yeah.
And I always think, like, we do things so much better when we collaborate with other people, right?
And faster and more, right? People,
Yeah.
it allows people to, because I know that when people ask me for support or help and I say yes, it makes me feel good to help that person. And so you're really, in a way, you're giving that to somebody else. You're saying, hey, first off, you're having humility by asking. And secondly, they feel good in helping you, believe it or not, for those people out there that are saying, I can't do that. I'm just being a nudge or I'm being annoying to them. No, they feel good about helping you. Let them love on you a little bit, right? Yeah.
I'm curious, in this journey, what was a moment when you really felt that you stepped into your power, into your grace?
It's such an interesting question. And I don't know what sparked it off, but there was a couple of years ago. I don't remember what sparked it off, but I sat down. My friends have always said, you don't really celebrate yourself. Have you seen what you've been doing? Have you seen where you've come, like how far you've come? And I sat there, I'm like, oh, thanks. In the back of my head, I'm thinking, well, those are really nice compliments, like whatever, right? But even in my saying that to myself, I realized that I really do stop the joy coming in. And so I think it was a friend who had said that, and the old, record started up again of, oh, thanks, that's really good. And then I stopped myself. I said, really, did I just say that to myself? And so I sat down and I really took stock of what had been created from, my entire life. It went from 2009, let me just look at the business. And then it started really rolling back into my entire life. Where have I not celebrated myself or allowed myself to celebrate even the micro steps that I've made in my life? And there was just this overwhelming snowball effect that came and said, oh my God, yes, that's happened and this has happened. And I was brave enough to step out and ask for support, or I've been in integrity with myself, or I've built the website, or look at the clients coming in, or now the finances are good and look, the kids are happy. And then it just started to snowball. And it was really, I'm getting chills right now about it, but it was really a moment of, okay, I'm actually the woman that I've always wanted to be. That right there, that right there is such an amazing moment. And since then, I've made it a point to stop and celebrate. Even the micro baby steps, I've been able to stop and celebrate. And so even in the company, we have a culture of celebration, right? So, I'll write to the team members, all of them, and I'll say, hey, look at the feedback we got from XYZ. Or, hey, really great email that you sent off to whatever, celebrate. And we'll do all the like signs or whatever for all the emojis for it. But yeah, we just have that kind of celebratory, we get to celebrate ourselves every once in a while. And even for those micro baby steps, it might be today that you got out of bed, right? We're not talking about making $1 million or getting a huge high-end client. That day, it could have been difficult for you to get out of bed. So, yeah.
That was beautiful. It's
Yeah.
100%. I think in anyone watching this too, if you haven't taken a moment recently, or if it's not in your regular practice, to acknowledge all that you've done, take a moment and really celebrate how far you've come, or, celebrate your greatness. And, as you were saying earlier, it doesn't have to be, $1 million client or anything like that. It's like putting up a boundary that you have not put up before. Saying no, taking the day off because you need it and you're exhausted.
Oh, those are great. Those are fantastic apps. And saying no is such a big piece.
Yeah.
Especially for those who tend to be people pleasers or say yes because they just don't want to say no. When you set those boundaries up, and it's so funny that you bring that up because it's such a perfect point. When I learned how to set up boundaries, because at the beginning of any business, you're always at a yes for anything and everything that you can possibly get. And what really helped me was learning to say no to the clients that I knew were toxic, that I knew I shouldn't be working with, because you typically will know within 5 minutes of being on a phone call with them. And so the first time that I said no, I was literally shaking because in my head, I'm saying no to finances, right? But it turns out they just weren't really a good fit. Next thing you know, there's a client right behind them coming up who is a perfect fit, who you love working with. And it just changes the whole atmosphere. And so one thing that I always tell other leaders and entrepreneurs is you get to pick and choose who you're surrounded by. And that includes your clients. If you're not a good fit, then you're not a good fit. And you're going to pay the price at some point down the road with them. So yeah, be surrounded by what you love constantly as much as you can.
That's great advice, because everything is energy. And if you bring on a client that is not aligned with you, you're depleting yourself. That it's going to be extra work. It's going to be, it's a different type of a hassle, whatever it might be. And that's going to be emotionally taxing. That is going to drain you.
Mm-hmm.
And the importance of listening to your gut. I keep reminding myself too that personally is just like when something doesn't feel right, listening to that and really honoring it, because you want to move through life feeling good, and amplifying that in others that are around you, whether it's people that you're collaborating with, and that also includes freelancers that you're bringing on, or staff, but also the clients, right? You're all collaborating, so you want to be on that vibration of joy.
Yes, absolutely. And underneath all of that is really a conversation around scarcity and abundance, right? And so if you're having that scarcity conversation of, well, this is the only client that's come my way, or there's a million other people that are doing the same thing, or, how am I going to get another client to replace this one? Those are really good examples of a scarcity conversation. But if you can switch that over to an abundance conversation, listen, there are how many billions of people living on the planet? Everyone can build a tribe. Everyone on this planet can build a tribe that think and align with the way that they do things. And so those are the people that you get to search for. Those are the people that will be attracted to you. So yes, understand that you can say no and be in an abundant conversation around it, that somebody who is a perfect fit for your tribe is right behind that person, because there is an abundance of everything in the world today. So yeah.
There absolutely is. I'm curious about your journey into starting a podcast studio and being a woman of color, because having a podcast studio is you're amplifying stories and visibility. Is that something you wanted to do intentionally as a creative, or is that also stemmed in being a woman of color yourself and understanding the importance of different narratives being shared, and how that just like kind of shifts the conversation? Because what you have done is you've created this space that amplifies so many diverse voices. It's an opportunity for people to be seen, heard, and celebrated.
Well, when I first got into this, I really didn't understand that piece. Really. I came into this because I was a marketing and small business startup consultant. And so I would go to different small businesses, start them up. In a year, they'd make $500,000, $1 million. They were very happy, and I would leave them. I would basically get hired to get fired. And so I got into podcasting because my friend was in radio. He knew radio very well. And basically, the model that I had for these companies were pretty much cut and paste. So I said, let's just align in this company and start this up. I didn't understand the storytelling part of it until I decided to sit down and actually start my own podcast. Because one piece for me is, if you have a business, I believe it's really important for you to sit down as a client and understand what the client experience is of your business. So for me, that was being a podcaster. So I sat down behind the mic. I had a great idea. I was going to talk to entrepreneurs and find out what made them tick, and just interview people that I had admired. So I built out, the logo for it and the first few episodes, and got the topics down. And I sat down behind the mic. I did my first interview. The guest took over the entire interview. And ultimately, it was just a horrible experience for me. Did the second one, sat with a friend who was an entrepreneur, and he started talking about his attempt with suicide. And I started to dive in a little bit more into that. And then I started talking about my own experience of, hitting difficult times and what that was like for me. And so afterward, I had friends write in and say, hey, I want to hear more about you. So I, midway through, decided to stop doing interviews and completely switched it up and started talking about those moments in my life where I was faced with either something very traumatic or a decision that I had to make, and how I was talking to myself through that, and then what transpired after I had done the thing, whatever it was, right? And so it was kind of like my journey through each one of these pinnacle moments in my life. And that's really how Big Girl Panties came to light. I found out that, the mic was my best friend. I went from the nervous, what am I going to talk about? How am I going to ask questions? This is a heavy hitting interview. Like, how do I go to the next one? I remember reading question. I'd get the answer. Question. I wasn't even listening to him. Question, answer, question, answer. And it felt so, And I learned, it's really a conversation. And once I got to dive into my own storytelling and my own conversations, that's when I started saying, wow, this is an amazing platform for everyone to tell their own stories, because everyone I've ever met in my life has an incredible story somewhere inside of them. And so that, paired with Sandy's show, I really saw that, hey, I stepped in it with this one. I really am loving this. So it didn't start off that way, but it ended up being a huge passion of mine. And, it's interesting because I don't think people in the world understand how lucky we are to have freedom of speech in this country. There's only 19% of the world's population, I think it's 19.1% of the world's population that actually has this freedom. We happen to be some of the lucky few. And so this is the perfect opportunity for people to stand on their soapbox and share their stories and really, activate that freedom of speech that they have.
It's such a beautiful and powerful point. It's true. And the tool of podcasting, right? Using it as a tool, it's so accessible. And, I'm saying this as somebody who started a podcast. It was first a documentary series, and I've gone into this season 2, and it went from being a docu-series to now just a podcast series. It's just so accessible, and that I've learned to do it on my own and have the opportunity of exploring different conversations with different people and learning about them. As you're saying, like, everybody has a story, right? And it's a really, 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 really powerful way, an accessible way of sharing stories. And I wonder, why do you think it's so important as an entrepreneur to have a podcast?
Well, like I said before, it's very closely related to finding that tribe. So this is another platform outside of, I wouldn't say it's outside, it can be integrated with social media, YouTube, like we're doing here. I've had people put it into their email signatures and blast it out. It's just another form of being able to do that. But what's so beautiful about it is so integrated with everything else. Not to mention, it's one of the most intimate forms of media, because you are literally in this person's ear, like inside their body. And so you can hear every inflection of their voice. You can hear their lip quiver if they're starting to like tear up. You can hear the anger, the energy. There's just a different vibe when you don't have the visual cue to lean on anymore. And so it's fantastic for those entrepreneurs who are looking to get their message out, to find their tribe worldwide, not just in their sphere. When you have platforms like Apple, Spotify, Google Play, they're broadcasting this worldwide for you. So not only do you have the people in New York, you have the East Coast, the United States, North America, and the world at large who can pick up what you have to say and really just spread your word for you.
Fantastic point.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. And this 4-week masterclass sounds like a phenomenal way for people to experience moving in that direction.
I am so excited. So I've been wanting to build out a program. First, I really wanted to have a in-person meeting on a weekend with women and sit in a rented Airbnb with, 10 women and really flesh out their podcast. But then COVID hit. And I said, okay, well, I get to switch gears on this one. And so I started building out a much larger class, which is 6 weeks long. And then I heard from Brittany. She said, hey, would you be interested in doing this? I said, yes, absolutely. Let me share with Good End, the basics of podcasting. We'll do some overview. We'll go into a deep dive. And there's even a class in there where we'll do brainstorming. So, they'll come with their ideas and we'll actually interact and talk about, hey, bring me your ideas. I'll give you feedback. The group can give you feedback. And so it's really just a nice enclave of people who are there to elevate each other. And so I am super, super, super excited.
I want to sign up. I haven't signed up yet.
You gotta sign up.
It sounds so great. Yeah. I'm really excited with that the two of you are connecting on this, and to see the continued community that you're building and supporting, and what's going to come for them from this as well, which is going to be really powerful. I would love for you to share, for anyone out there who's listening, watching, the best lesson learned or best advice given to you on your entrepreneurial journey.
Trust yourself. That's an easy one. Trust yourself. And I don't mean like trust yourself in terms of you're going to do something. I mean, trust yourself that you're going to be able to handle the outcome, whatever the outcome is. If you look back in the history of your life, not that you ever need evidence of it, but if you ever look back at the history of your life, there has been some moments that you have pulled through and you didn't think you would. Trust yourself to understand that you will handle the outcome, whatever it is. That is the biggest piece of advice I could ever give to anybody, even outside of business.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much. This has been fantastic.
It has. I wanted to, we're wrapping up. I want to be, of course, conscious of your time. And I'm really excited that everyone's going to get to experience 4 weeks of what you and Gooden are putting together. Would love to know if there's anything that you wanted to share, anything else that maybe we didn't talk about, any kind of last, closing thoughts or anything like that.
Join the class. That's what I would say, is definitely join the class. If you want to check out the production company that I started, it's thehangarstudios.com, THEHANGAR studios with an S.com, to learn more about that. But please join us for the masterclass. I'd love to see you there.
Amazing. Jennifer, it has been an absolute pleasure.